me the rope!
Push it
Get that tail! Got it! Strong!
down! Push it down!
No, damn it!
Sam, tie it!
Come on, hold her! There!
Look at the size of this thing. Scientists are rattled to their core, their professional composure completely shattered after multiple profoundly deformed human-shaped sea beings were hauled from the depths. Locations that no camera, no submarine, no probe had ever captured before in documented history. These creatures are not mindless animals, responding to instinct alone. These creatures possess a deeply disturbing capacity for awareness, for consciousness, for deliberate action and intentional response. They blink with what appears to be intentional consciousness, their eyes tracking movement with focused attention and calculated gaze. They scream with a voice that sounds disturbingly familiar, uncomfortably close to human vocalizations, yet fundamentally different in a way that unsettles every single listener to the very core of their being. They thrash with a fury that transcends mere instinct, a violence that feels almost deliberately orchestrated, calculated, purposeful, and directed. And every single frame raises a sharper, more troubling question than the last. If the ocean is finally pushing its secrets upward from the abyss, what pressure, what force, what catastrophic disturbance forced them to emerge now? Something down there in the darkness is changing, transforming in ways that science cannot yet predict or fully understand. The changes are happening fast enough for hardened fishermen to notice men who have spent decades on these waters, who know the ocean's moods and patterns intimately, who can read the water's signals like language itself. The transformations are terrifying enough for leading experts to go completely silent, abandoning their usual scientific discourse and peer review mechanisms. There is a communication vacuum where explanations should exist. There is silence where data should be analyzed. The scientific community is rendered mute by what it cannot explain or comprehend. Now, at last, the real mystery begins to unravel. Why are these beings rising toward us instead of remaining safely hidden in the crushing pressures of the abyssal zone where they belong? What compels them toward the surface? What drives them into the light, where humans can see them, document them, capture them on film? What calls them upward? The thrashing on deck that first night will never be forgotten by anyone who witnessed it. Anyone who saw the creature's desperate fight for life against the nets and hooks of human captivity. It's peculiarly unsettling how the modern world keeps acting surprised when a creature of such massive proportions is captured on camera fighting desperately for its life. Yet no one on that fishing vessel, no seasoned captain with decades of experience, no experienced deckhand who had spent his life on the ocean, no safety officer with training and protocols, believed the net would hold for even a single second. The collective knowledge of the crew, the accumulated experience of a lifetime at sea, told them this would be absolutely impossible. The physics shouldn't allow it. The biology shouldn't permit it. Yet, it happened, defying all expectations and understanding. The creature's tail smashes against the aluminum floor with a force that reverberates through every inch of the hull, making the entire structure vibrate like something alive and responsive, like the ship itself is reacting to the impact. The mesh of the net digs deep into its scales, cutting and grinding, creating wounds and drawing what appears to be blood that darkens the water around it. The rope strains under pressure, twisted and contorted, appearing at every moment on the verge of snapping entirely, on the threshold of complete failure. Its entire body contorts in a spasm of violence and terror, a convulsion so intense that fishermen later described it as feeling too aware, too conscious, too intentional to be merely reflexive. The movements seemed calculated, as if the creature understood exactly what was happening and was responding with deliberate resistance, with intelligent defiance. These were not the random struggles of a simple animal. These were the movements of a being fighting for survival with purpose and strategy. And when the spotlight scans along that shimmering blue spine, that alien landscape of biological impossibility, that structure that should not exist according to known zoology and taxonomy, lighting up muscles jerking in pure, unadulterated desperation, the moment transforms entirely. It stops feeling like a discovery. It stops feeling like a successful catch. It ceases to feel like scientific advancement. It begins to feel like something darker, something that crosses an invisible line. It starts to feel like a crime that the ocean itself has merely witnessed rather than participated in. The witness becomes implicated. The observers become perpetrators. The act of observing becomes a violation of something sacred and untouchable. The water around the creature is darkening with blood and biological fluids. The nets tighten with each convulsion. The camera captures every moment, every detail, every undignified movement. No one watching can believe what they're seeing. Some footage doesn't haunt you because of how genuinely terrifying it is in its content. Some footage haunts you because you were standing on the wrong side of it, because you were the witness, because you saw something that will forever change how you see yourself in relation to the world and other creatures. Some images burn themselves into memory because you realize you've witnessed something that should have remained hidden, something dragged unwillingly from the deep where it belonged, where it had every right to exist undisturbed for eternity. You become a participant in a violation, whether you intended to be or not, whether you wanted this responsibility or not, whether you sought this guilt or not. The act of witnessing makes you complicit. The act of documenting makes you a perpetrator. The act of watching makes you part of the tragedy. And just when the world thought the previous body, the previous specimen, had reached the absolute limit of what could possibly be caught on camera, these fishermen proved that no one was prepared. No amount of preparation could ready humanity for what they pulled from the Mento currents that dark evening. The discovery would trigger a cascade of events that would reshape understanding of what exists below the surface. The world changed in that moment, though no one realized it yet. No one understood that they were witnessing the beginning of something much larger, something that would fundamentally alter human understanding of the ocean and the creatures within it. The creature twists with violent, convulsive movements, almost tearing the net entirely asunder with its desperate thrashing and determined attempts at escape. Its scales shimmer with an otherworldly quality, catching and refracting light, like fractured glass attempting to swallow the daylight itself, absorbing illumination into itself as if drawing energy from the sun, as if converting photons into something useful, something that might aid escape. Its tail thrashes with the frantic dread of something caught between two opposing forces, struggling on the wrong side of survival, pulled away from the one place it could exist, pulled toward a fate it can only dimly perceive through primal understanding. The helplessness is palpable. The desperation is infectious. Those watching feel it in their chests, in their bones, in that place where empathy lives, even when it's unwelcome and uncomfortable. And when its throat releases a choking rasp, a sound that is shockingly, disturbingly similar to descriptions in ancient maritime accounts, stories that modern scientists had casually dismissed as pure myth, folklore, and the imagination of superstitious sailors. The men on deck step back in unison, away from the creature, away from its presence. Fear overtakes them completely. Realization settles in with the weight of truth. They haven't been filmed rescuing anything. They haven't been filmed discovering anything. They've been recorded dragging up a mind, a consciousness, a being that understands fear with crystalline clarity, a creature that fought this desperately, this intelligently, because it understood exactly what was happening, exactly what it meant, exactly what fate awaited it in the net and beyond. The ancient songs were real. The myths were warnings. Who would have believed that a specimen like this could lie motionless under laboratory lights, sterile, controlled, clinical, under observation, while every scientist in the room, every credentialed expert with advanced degrees and publications, pretended with varying degrees of success not to be terrified by what was caught on camera? Who could have imagined such a scene of scientific equanimity cracking under the weight of the unknown? The fluorescent lights hum overhead with an electrical drone that seems ominous and purposeful. The specimen lays on its back on cold stainless steel that reflects overhead light. The room is quiet except for the sound of breathing and the gentle clicking of cameras documenting everything for the permanent record that will outlive them all. Its skin twitches and spasms the exact moment gloved hands begin to scan along the spine in systematic, methodical movements that feel invasive and wrong. Its ribs tighten, contracting and releasing, as if actively resisting the preparation, as if the musculature itself objects to what is about to happen, as if on some cellular level the body knows what comes next. Its fingers jerk with a strange, delayed rhythm, a movement pattern that resembles muscle memory from a world no one has studied, no one understands, no one can research. The movements are rhythmic, patterned, suggesting some form of residual consciousness, some aspect of the being that persists even in apparent death. Is it truly dead, or is it simply dormant, waiting, recovering strength for the moment of resurrection? And, when the incision exposes a glistening network of cartilage and tissue, a biological architecture that is eerily, impossibly similar to descriptions of the drowned, tall beings that ancient texts claimed the world had forgotten and abandoned, the situation transforms into something beyond scientific inquiry. The technicians exchange looks that convey something entirely different from scientific curiosity. Their expressions shift towards something closer to guilt, to complicity, to the uncomfortable realization that they are no longer observers. They have become participants in a transgression. They have become the instruments of violation. The camera captures their discomfort. The video records their complicity. History records their names, as though they had discovered a secret that hadn't been filmed for human eyes to see. A knowledge that was never meant to be understood by creatures like us, by beings as young and insignificant as humanity. If this corpse, this dead, lifeless form, still reacts to pain, still demonstrates physiological responses at the cellular level, still shows signs of awareness, then what happens when it wakes? What consciousness might return to these tissues? What intelligence might restore itself to these cells? What implications does this hold for every theory about death, about consciousness, about the boundary between life and whatever comes after? The questions multiply. The answers elude. The scientists exchange glances that speak of complicity and dread. Let's move deeper into the evidence. Let's examine footage that rewrites everything we believed about these creatures and their nature and purpose. What followed next stunned scientists who reviewed the documentation, because no one expected a siren-like entity to be caught on camera during a storm that had already forced most vessels back to secure harbors and protected ports. The wind was reaching destructive speeds that could rip metal from reinforced structures. The waves were stories tall, towering above even the largest fishing vessels. Visibility was nearly zero, reduced to just a few feet of murky water and rain. Most ships had already retreated to safety. Most crews had decided that the ocean had won, that attempting to fish in such conditions was madness and suicide. Yet one crew remained. One boat continued its work. And that decision changed everything, forever altering the course of events. Its mouth freezes at the moment of a scream, wide enough to display rows of translucent teeth, each tooth appearing more alien, more impossible than the last, constructed of material that shouldn't exist in nature according to all known chemistry. Its arms claw through the net with a fury that feels older than language itself, older than human civilization, older than recorded history, stretching back millennia. Its torso rides against the deck of the ship, drenched in seawater, and what appears to be a deep, existential terror so complete it seems to eclipse all other considerations and replace all thought. And when its wail rises, echoing across the deck and into the storm, matching descriptions from 17th century maritime logs of storm, weepers, creatures, sailors, believed warned of tragedies and apocalyptic events, the crew reaches a critical realization. They've caught something that shouldn't have been filmed, something the ocean itself may punish them for revealing. When all these encounters are placed side by side, when all this documented evidence is examined together as a complete narrative arc, a darker pattern emerges with undeniable clarity and force. One that suggests these creatures weren't simply found by accident or random chance. They weren't randomly encountered by fishermen who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. They were interrupted. Their emergence, their rising, their breach of the surface barrier was interrupted and disrupted by human activity, by human intrusion into spaces where humans had no right to be, no permission to enter. Every scream captured on camera, every thrash of desperation, Every desperate lunge toward escape and return to the depths feels less like an attack and more like a warning. A warning aimed at a world that never learned to listen. A message from the deep directed toward a species too focused on domination to understand communication. Maybe the real terror isn't what surfaced from the deep. Maybe the genuine, existential horror is what our presence forced to rise. What our interference compelled into awareness. What our intrusion awakened in the ancient waters where it had rested undisturbed. For geological ages, for eons, before humanity existed, the ocean has been pushing back. The boundaries have been challenged and tested. The deep has been breached. Whether we understand it or not, whether we're prepared or not, the rising has begun. Something has awakened. Something has realized it's no longer alone. Something has decided to respond to the intrusion. Scientists continue to study the footage frame by frame. Analysts continue to decode the creature's movements with increasing urgency. Researchers continue to search for patterns and meaning in the chaos. But every moment we spend studying is another moment they spend adapting and evolving. Every moment we spend analyzing is another moment they spend moving closer to the surface. Every moment we spend preparing is another moment they spend organizing and coordinating. And perhaps, in our obsession with understanding what's happening, we've failed to notice that it's already too late. The creatures are coordinating across vast distances. Their emergence isn't random. The network awakens. The connection strengthens between individual creatures and the whole. What we captured wasn't a victim, but a herald. What we filmed wasn't a creature, but a messenger. What we documented wasn't an encounter, but a declaration of intent. Governments remain silent about what they know. Media downplays events and buries stories. Scientists debate classification and taxonomy, while the time for action slips away. But in the depths, in the trenches, in places humans cannot see and cannot reach, the response continues. The rising accelerates with each passing day. The preparation advances steadily. The purpose clarifies with every moment. They're not fleeing something. They're advancing toward something. Toward us, toward the surface. Toward the day when our world and theirs collide in catastrophic confrontation. The boundary between worlds grows thinner. The barrier